So good morning, good afternoon for everybody. I see that a lot of you are still joining the meeting.
How many participants are you expecting?
Around 130 participants I'm expecting.
Wow.
And it can be also a little bit more.
Okay.
And it is from all around the world.
Great.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. And it is a little bit of a, this is the right time of the year when we should organize virtual mini conferences. Because as you see maybe behind my CEO Eric Hauser's virtual background, we were supposed to have TNC this week. And since we are not there, we are organizing and running this virtual mini conference on the most important topic at the moment is the supporting education and the role of NRENs to support education. So thank you so much for joining this morning and being with us. I would like to start by sharing some of my slides because it's at the right time and since most of you have joined. But before I do that, please make sure when you join, mute your microphone. So once again, welcome. My name is Gyöngyi Horváth and I'm the Community Support Officer with a main focus to support education for our GEAN community and the NREN communities. You have all seen the wiki page with the online agenda and I would like to quickly go through it. So the first part after my welcome and introduction will be the plenary part with the main subject of the role of NRENs for education. After that, we will have a short break just for you to have a cup of coffee, water, and stretch your legs. And then we return back to the plenary room to announce the community sessions and also the parallel sessions. And then from there, also again, via the wiki page, you will be able to choose which session you would like to attend. We have put up the links on the wiki page with a password as well. So you will be able to join any of the different sessions what you choose. And then from 1 to 2 o'clock, we have the lunch break. For some of you, it might be a bit late, some of you a bit early, but well, we all work in different time zones. And so for some of you, it will be very early breakfast. I know that as well. And during the lunch break, if you don't want to be completely away, we have some activities, so please check out on the wiki page because we have a virtual dancing session and also a virtual mindfulness session. So you can just join in again via the wiki page, you can join the room and then join these sessions. And then we return at 2 o'clock to announce the parallel sessions. That's again will be in this same virtual room where we are now. And then in the afternoon, we have parallel sessions with at least 3 topics plus 1 community session topics. And then we have a short break. And finally, from 3 to 4 o'clock, we do a summary and a wrap up. And I find it very important that we are all participating also in the summaries where we can decide on what will be our next steps and how we will continue the collaboration among us. So first, I would like to do the introduction. I would like to introduce the Task Force Education Steering Committee and thank them all for the hard work they put in to make this event a success and also to populate the event with a relevant program from the community for the community. So thank you, Eric Kickenborg, who is the chair for the Task Force Education. Thank you, Dragana Kupres from Carnet, who is also the main coordinator and also the steering committee member. She will be also running a session and helping us with a summary and also monitoring of eventually any chat where she is not attending. Thank you, Esther Wilkinson from JISC. She will be helping and wrapping up the whole day and summarizing, so please make sure that you're supporting her work. Thank you, Vegard Moon from UNIT, Norway. He is also helping us with a summary and also monitoring chats during the conference. Tommy Dolans from Arnes, Slovenia, thank you very much. He will be also helping with the summaries and the chat monitoring and attending the sessions. Natalie Roth from Switzerland, thank you very much. She is running a session in the afternoon about digital assessment and online blended education. Thank you very much for your help. And Yasmin, she cannot be with us, but thank you for her also for her work. She is on maternity leave, so she is preparing for the next generation of education. And Birgitta Hemmingsson, thank you very much, Birgitta. You have been instrumental with the conference preparation. She is the technical host for the conference, the main technical host, so thank you so much. For the technical support, we have Fiore Lischatz from CARNET. He is supporting the lobby, so if you have any technical difficulties, please go back to the lobby, ask him questions, he can help you and advise you where to go, how to resolve them. And Nabil Ashraf from GEANT, he was also helping with the technical preparations from the virtual breakout rooms. We have a session host from the community who are already decided, and that's Licia Florio from GEANT. She's gonna run the first session on trust and identity. Thank you very much, Licia. Then we have Annabelle Grant also from GEANT. She is running the one about services and management element. Thank you very much, Annabelle. And of course, I already mentioned the other chairs from the Task Force Education Steering Committee. And I would like to thank all the speakers, also those who are the participants in the session, to join and agree to participate in this important day today. A couple of things about the rules of engagement. So again, I would like to ask you to mute when you are not speaking. I have mentioned in the lobby, but I'm mentioning here as well that please correct your name on the participants list. You can do it when you go on your image and you see the 3 buttons. You can rename your profile. So please add your name and possibly also the name of the organization you are joining. If you have any questions, please raise your virtual hand. And also you can add your question to the chat box. We will be monitoring them. And please wait until you are asked to address the questions. And when you are talking, for the better experience for us all, please enable your video. And also for your information, all the official sessions will be recorded. Of course, not the breaks and not the lunch break activities, but all the official sessions are recorded. We would like, as expected outcomes and conclusions at the end of the meeting, to see how the GEANT community can support education, where we see common collaboration areas, identify some actions and potential next steps as some more concrete outcomes. So we have created Google documents for each sessions where we are asking the session chairs and the session hosts to put in the summaries, and with your help, of course, it is editable for all of you, so you will be able to access it also via the wiki page. So this was my short introduction. I hope you will have a great conference, virtual conference. And with this one, I would like to ask our first presenter, Eric Hauser, my CEO, to please kick off this event.
Thank you, Genji. I hope you can see my screen. And by the way, my tip is as a speaker, I like to see the videos of everybody. I'm teaching also a course at the Leiden University, and there's nothing more annoying than seeing only black screens or still photograph screens. I have no clue what my students are doing. They might be all off to the bar and at the meantime registering like they are there. But anyway, let me tell you a little bit about GEANT and NRENs and how they engage into education. For those of you who don't know GEANT, this is at the top you see our mission. It's to provide an open, innovative and trusted information infrastructure for the European knowledge economy and to the benefit of society worldwide. It's way too long as a mission, but to boldly go where no one has gone before was already taken. We are a membership association, and our members are the different the European national research and education networks. We do several things. We coordinate and participate in EC-funded projects. We operate a network infrastructure with connections between all the countries in Europe and from Europe to all regions in the world. And we manage a portfolio of services for research and education, usually labeled with EDU and then the name of the service. And last but certainly not least, we organize and run community events and working groups like the one you're currently attending. This is our membership. As you can see, we cover almost all of Europe, and we're working pretty hard to add Bosnia and Kosovo to this list so that we're covering all of Europe. And this is how we connect to the rest of the world. We connect in total with 130 NRENs with speeds of up to multiples of 100 gigabits per second. And my estimate, and I'm saying this as an estimate, is that altogether these NRENs all over the world connect at least 100 million students in higher education. According to the OECD, there's 240 million students in higher education worldwide. So my estimate is that we connect at least 100 million, which is probably on the low side if you look at all the networks that have joined in. And this is the services that we support and that are most important. There's more services, but these are most important for education. It's PLENARY Room, which is our popular global roaming service, which is of course not very popular at the moment because nobody's roaming. It's EDU, which is the identity federations, which allow simple identified access to content, services, and resources. We run In Academia, which is our newest service, which is a lightweight student validation service that protects student privacy but gives them access to commercial services with a student discount. We have EDU Teams, which makes managing virtual teams easy, and we have EDU VPN, which is currently used a lot. We've seen an enormous increase in the use of EDU VPN all over the world due to the corona crisis, which enables secure virtual private networking. So it creates a safe environment for researchers and students using public Wi-Fi, but also home Wi-Fi access points to have a secure channel to their home institute. We also deliver, together with our NRENs in Europe, we deliver cloud services. These can be distinguished in two different types of cloud services. One is the community cloud, where the cloud service is provided either by an NREN or by one of the universities in Europe. And we have we do a joint procurement of commercial cloud services for research and education environment. And we did that a couple of years ago, where only a couple of countries, I think 16 countries, signed up. Well, we already run into a 25 million yearly turnover, and now the new round we're doing 40 countries signed up, and we are coordinating with the US and Latin America to make sure that these procurement efforts are maximized in the way that we all over the world are asking the same things from these commercial providers, not only in terms of costs, but also in terms of data protection. And of course, we have our JEON community program, where we focus on knowledge transfer, skills development, etc. And we run various task forces and special interest groups in those. And of course, this is the task force EDU that you're currently attending. As a response to the current crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, we made available two types of services that were still in beta, but we decided to move that forward very fast because there's a large demand for it due to this crisis. One of them is Open Up to You, which is an open source, interoperable, GDPR compliant, modular, highly customizable distance learning platform with several tools in there. And the other one is EduMeet, which is an WebRTC based virtual video conferencing platform that is also open source and allows for secure and trusted video conferencing. Junji will go into this a little bit more in detail, but we did a survey amongst our NRENs, and the pie chart on the left shows you that out of the surveyed NRENs, the majority provides services to education. That's the blue part. The red part is the NRENs that don't have education in their remit, and the gray part is the ones that didn't reply to the survey. So you can see that out of our 43 NRENs, the majority provides educational services. Most of the time that's higher education. However, several NRENs also provide services to primary and education and to high schools. Most of the services they provide, you can see on the right, the bigger the circle, the more NRENs responded they provide that service. So it's trust and identity services, EduID, EduVPN, etc. It's a digital learning environment. Video conferencing is very popular, and a little bit less popular, but still serviced are student management systems, learning analytics, zero rating, and digital assessment. Together with the NRENs, we made sure that we did an inventory of all our responses to this COVID-19 crisis, and especially in the area of education, and that has made us a sort of a spider in the web to connect all kinds of initiatives on a European and a global scale where we are involved. The European Commission has focused extra attention to education, which is normally a case for member states, but here they need some coordination, and they allowed us to do that, of course, through the Up to You project. We were approached by the Unesco, and you will hear more from Unesco later on today on their Global Education Coalition initiative. We're working with Unicef on the GIGA project to make sure that more and more schools are connected so that they can profit from online education all over the world, all the way into every part of the world, including Africa and Asia, South America. And we work closely with the World Bank that is financing various initiatives all over the world to make all of this happen. We're very happy to be at heart. I think we have the resources, and most of all, we have the community, you guys, to make sure that we can help coordinate this and make life as easy as possible for students and teachers all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for this nice introduction. Is there any questions to Eric now, or we can also wait until the end of the sessions once the presentations are finished? So I don't see yet any questions. Then I suggest that we move to the next presenter, and I would like to ask if Koen can enable his presentation and video. Koen, are you with us? Yes, I can see that you are unmuted already. very good, very early morning, and thank you so much for agreeing to present in these ungodly hours at 5 o'clock in the morning for your time. Kun will present their activities about the World Bank and where he can see our role as NRENs and the NREN community.
Well, thank you so much, Jonji, and thanks to the whole JEON team for inviting me to participate. It's really a pleasure to connect with the NREN community. I'll just have a few slides. I'll keep this really very short. Given that it's an ungodly hour here, I won't share my video, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. But I do have a few slides just to give you a sense of what the World Bank does in this period, but also in general, maybe with our support to the higher education sectors around the world. And so we've really realized that higher education is one of our core goals if we are to reduce poverty, which is our overall mission. Basically knowing and having seen the evidence of this is that accessing higher education remains the surest way out of poverty for a family and for countries as well. But we've realized also that higher education does not reach the poorest very effectively. Some countries do better than others, but overall this remains a huge issue. And one of the main priorities of our work is to engage in a dialogue with governments around these issues. As was mentioned, we invest in higher education systems, mostly in low and middle income countries. We do some in higher income countries as well. But our priority is really in the countries that do not have other ways of investing in these systems, and as such, higher education investments represent about 25% of our education portfolio, which is typically hovers around $20 billion. So the goal is really to leverage our financing that goes to these countries in general, make sure that there is a strong project that improves higher education, and increasingly we are trying to build in components to our higher education projects that support the NRENs. And I'll explain on the next slide why that's the case. Beyond that, we also do quite a bit of analytical work. So I'm an economist who works at the World Bank. I do quite a bit of research myself next to the project work. And to make sure that we really have the right data, we do impact evaluations to also make sure that one is that there's an economic rationale to that, to make sure that investments work, but there's also maybe an analytical rationale. This that we really want to make sure that when we do a project, we change something, we sign a big contract with a provider, but we want to make sure that that actually leads to changes in people's lives, in the way that that education is being provided, but also being used. And that's really an interesting space when I think for the issue that is being discussed today, because we've started to look at how can we sort of use some of the data that is being collected, but also how can we become better at actually reaching the people who are not being reached yet. So these last few months have been extremely dynamic and a very interesting time. I've been very happy to have several discussions with the JEON team. And I was talking to a few of my colleagues over the last few days, and we're sort of realizing 6 things that we have learned that we really need to reflect on more, and we're happy to do that with the NREN community. So one is that around the world we still see a huge inequality in connectivity. So this goes mostly for students, but also still for some faculty in some of the countries that I work. They did not have connectivity at home, and in many cases they still don't have a device at home. They might have they typically have a phone now, even in extremely poor communities in Pakistan, where I do a lot of work. 95% of families have a mobile phone, but they will not have a laptop or a smartphone in most of these cases, and so that remains a huge issue. We've found ways to go around it by setting up loans or micro loans that families can access to purchase a device. We've been working on zero rating that was already mentioned, and with the telcos to reduce prices of bandwidth. But we really need to do more in this space still, which is a sort of a traditional agenda. Secondly, when we went into sort of a pivot online, and faculty where faculty did move their content online, we realized they were not actually very ready, and they were not very used to speaking in a VC. They weren't really used to put their materials in an LMS, even in places where you know is still a very teacher or professor centered kind of education, and so we've started to put in place 24/7 support to faculty to help them. Similarly, we were really quite surprised. We think students are digital natives these days, but students were not maybe as ready to absorb the content that quickly. There were a lot of complaints. We saw hashtags in many of the countries that we work that students wanted a semester break, or they just wanted to have they didn't want to have this kind of online ways of learning because they weren't considered to be very effective. So we also saw really a voice come up out of the student groups. Finally, we made a lot of mistakes early on, and in some cases it's been quite difficult to correct those mistakes because we were supporting governments and have been and governments have been contracting partners where they had very long-standing contracts, which were difficult to break out of, and which maybe weren't supporting the clients very effectively. And so I think in terms of procurement, we are learning a lot. Data systems typically were not set up very well to support the things that we were doing, and credentialing, for instance, was really a very difficult thing that many governments hadn't really wrapped their heads around properly. Another issue was regulation. I do quite a bit of work in Bangladesh, where the knee-jerk reaction of the government's been to regulate distance learning and to actually stop universities from doing things online in a cheap way. Universities were told that they could not offer programs online, and basically sent their and basically set up a sort of a holiday system. That changed over the last few weeks when governments realized that students can't just be sitting at home and not getting any kind of learning experience. And so we've had these very interesting dialogues around how to improve quality assurance procedures, also regulatory space around the telco market, which typically was not competitive. Finally, and here, this is my really final point, is we've come to realize that there's really not a strong evidence base for the kinds of things that we've been supporting in distance learning and higher education. And here I also want to maybe provoke the community a little bit and ask whether we can maybe work on improving this evidence base. So do we know now, and are we learning about which services are really key to learning, and not just learn in an anecdotal way, but prove that with evidence, with impact evaluation? How far do we reach? Do we reach all students who are connected? We've had interesting discussions on data coming from distance learning and how it's secured, but can we also find ways to analyze this and making some of this data public? Even, of course, we don't want to do that by compromising students' identities, but like in other parts of the education system where we've brought in data, and that's anonymous but can be analyzed. We've learned a lot about how our interventions work. So let me stop there. We set up a website with a lot of resources for countries to use, and I want to thank again the GEANT community, because we've been sort of tracing your footsteps on several of the initiatives and several of the lessons that have been learned, and we try and make that as accessible as possible to countries around the world. So thanks very much for inviting me again, and continue the discussion. Looking forward.
Thank you very much, Koen, for the nice presentation and introduction, and also for the triggering question. I think we will address it at the end of this session. And now I would like to ask our next speaker, Borhin Chakrum from Unesco, to give his presentation. Borhin, if you can enable your presentation, share your presentation. And thank you again for presenting in our virtual mini conference.
Thank you, Jungwei. I will have an oral presentation. I would like also to thank you for the invitation and congratulate you, Jungwei and Eric, for this very promising event. I was impressed by both the participants, the speakers, and also the agenda. I think up front, I would like to say that we at UNESCO share the GEANT initiative, the community, and the goals of the NREN, because we think that what you are putting forward is really critical, and we hope that together we can leverage your experience, expertise, and community to achieve the goals that we have set for the Global Education Coalition. What I would like to do in the 5 minutes that Jungwei, you kindly offered is first of all set a bit what I think would be important for the debate today. What are the major challenges, and Koen referred to them earlier. I will add a few elements there. I would like also to share briefly what we are doing through the Global Education Coalition, and of course, I hope that this will attract attention of the participant and potentially trigger more engagement as we move forward. I would like to highlight 4 major challenges, and as I said, Koen mentioned some of them. These are, for me, equity, quality, ethical, and financial challenges that we are facing based on what we have learned from the COVID-19 education response. Let me start with equity. Obviously, we have all witnessed the shift and the migration to online learning, but I think it put and it brought inequality into stark light. First of all, we have seen that the most disadvantaged are the hardest hit from this crisis. Be it youngest, but also I think we need to think about adult learners, because we tend to focus only on the formal education, but I think we need to look at the lifelong learning perspective in this case. And we have seen a major challenge for many young people, for children, but also for adults, to engage in a learning journey that has been interrupted because of the crisis. Probably, as Koen referred to, one of the major challenges is connectivity. According to our data and the data that we cross-referenced with the International Telecom Organization, that we have half of the students are affected by the closure and they don't have a household computer or internet access. The situation is, of course, in some regions very deep and very alarming, like in sub-Saharan Africa. But even in Europe, we know from the data that 14% of the household do not have access to internet, and 22% do not have access to computers. So the connectivity challenge, and that's why GEANT initiative and the different strands that Eric referred to are critical from my point of view. They apply to Europe, but obviously, when you take them at the global scale, they are even deeper and more challenging. The second challenge is quality. Of course, there is the teaching staff skills and qualifications. According to a survey that we have conducted, around 64% of the teachers are considered not having the skills to engage in distance learning. This echoes, for example, what OECD colleagues have identified as challenge in OECD countries. But if I take it to Sub-Saharan Africa, we have more than 63% of the teachers do not meet the qualification requirement to teach. And that means it has much wider impact when you take the digital skills in it and engaging in distance learning. But I think it's important to consider the quality not only of the online platform. We have seen that in many countries it's high tech, it's low tech, it's no tech solution that have been adopted. And it's important that we consider these wide range of solutions that have been adopted, not only to focus on online learning, while it is important as it is. I think, and Koen mentioned that for now we have very little evidence about the effectiveness of the different approaches and the impact in terms of both engaging in learning, but also in terms of learning outcomes. And we are discussing with different partners to tap on the data that is available in distance learning platform to see what we can learn from that, and of course protecting the data privacy of the learners. And that leads me to the third challenge that we think important, is what I call ethical challenge. Is that we know through the technology mediated learning environment, we have major challenges on the security, the privacy, and the personal information of the learners. How we can protect those data. What regulatory framework we have on distance and online education. There are some interesting initiatives. And a week ago, we had a webinar on the same topic. And we have seen some interesting initiative, be it at the global level, the GPA initiative, or at the country level, we have seen in US, for example, or the GDPR in Europe. But obviously, when you go to some countries where the institutional arrangement, the regulatory framework are very weak regarding the citizens' data protection, then that has, of course, implication on the learners' data protection. Maybe the last one that I think Koen didn't mention, but for us is very critical. We are entering into a global recession. And globally, we see that in many countries, this recession will impact the socioeconomic dynamic of the countries. We see that from IMF that the forecast is around -3% of GDP growth. That's a deep recession, and in some countries it's very high level of recession. The forecast, for example, in France is -11. So there is this will impact, of course, employment, economic growth, but it will impact education. And we are doing different scenarios looking at how this recession will impact education budget. And the most pessimistic scenario that we see, which will have and that we will see that the education budget will shrink for 5%. That means around 337 billion less in 2020 budget. And that's really a big amount that will impact both the quality, probably the equity, and obviously in some countries this may impact also the teachers, because the highest part of the education budget is about teachers. So I think it's important that also in your discussion, our discussion, we take into account the financial implication of the crisis and then how this will impact mechanically, potentially, the education budget. Maybe to finish with what we are trying to do, we have, and as Eric and Jungwoo mentioned, we have launched a global education coalition to synergize initiative and to leave no one behind, and that's what we are trying to do. And we decided to launch the global coalition because we thought that ministries of education cannot solve the problem, and it requires a multi-actor engagement. It requires, of course, UN organization, public sector, but it requires also private sector. It requires non-profit organization, civil society, academia networks like yours to deliver on this promise. And what we are trying to do, we are trying to mobilize these partners to articulate responses to support countries in addressing the challenge, both during the crisis, but also as the schools and learning systems are reopening. But I think it's important to look ahead, and it's about building resilience of the education system. It's about building a new vision for education that leaves no one behind. And it's time for us to really think seriously about equity and inclusion. It's not clear why, when there is a health crisis, there is the international community is mobilized, but when a learner drops from education, nobody cries about it. We think it's important that we think about equity and inclusion as we are reimagining education and going forward, but put this in lifelong learning perspective. And communities like your community is critical to, first of all, mobilize this initiative that you are having, think globally and not only in one region, and that's what probably Giant can bring, but also think how we can work together to deliver, for example, on teacher training, on connectivity, on learners who are the most disadvantaged, potentially on gender dimension, because we know that in some communities, gender and women and girls particularly are the most hit by the crisis, be it in terms of, unfortunately, early pregnancy, early marriage, violence. So there is all these, call them multiple factors of inequity and exclusion that we need to take together. So I would like to finish with the calling on you to join the Global Education Coalition. We were very happy to engage with Giant and with the network, but we would like to see this global coalition growing to deliver on the promise of leaving no one behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Borhin, for this very inspirational talk and welcoming us. I would like to ask if there is any questions for Borhin now, or we can also take it at the end of the session. Okay, so not yet. And just to remind you that in the next part of the program, you have also a chance to create a session. So if there is an interesting topic coming out of this one, you will be able to create one. We have a meeting rooms available for that. So now I move on to the next one, which is my presentations on the results of the annual NREN educational survey. So every year since last year was the first year, and now is our second year to make a survey on what our community is doing in terms of supporting education beyond just connectivity. So the main objective of this survey is to provide us information and overview on any additional activities and services beyond the connectivity for supporting the educational institutions in general with their innovation challenges, and also identify opportunities from the results. It is targeting the teaching and learning communities and the education institutions themselves. In Europe at Giant, we have 43 countries present, and out of these 43 countries, as you can see, those in dark pink are all providing additional educational services. Those in light pink, they don't have the mandate to provide additional educational services beyond the connectivity. And those in purple, they don't have the resources. So there is a wish, but there are no resources. We have identified these 12 areas of educational services, which we wanted to ask the question about, starting from the before mentioned digital learning environment, student management system, trusted identity for education, video conferencing, digital assessment, etc. I will not read it up all for you, but it will be available afterwards on the wiki page. So for the educational service levels, which are the ones before we mentioned, we also created 4 levels: initiative, project, service level, and the ones which are phasing out. It is important for us later on to really see where the direction and trends are going from our members, and also which are the potential new areas which are growing as a new service from the community. This shows us the overview per countries and also their level as in terms of their progress level per service. So you can see that the top level comes out, and the most one is the digital learning environment and the trust and identity services, as it was mentioned. And I guess because of the COVID-19 pandemic, also the significance of video conferencing for education is accelerated over the last couple of months. But we do have to address, and this is also a growing area, on the area of digital assessment and how NRENs can support it. I think given our portfolio with trust and identity and security, this is a growing importance, a new area. As well as the learning analytics is also growing. I will not go into it too much detail again. This will be analyzed later, and we will go back to the contacts from the NRENs to provide a bit more detailed information, and we will follow up in the autumn with more information on this. And this one shows per NRENs the different services they're providing. The ones we are listed from the 12 services. So from Albania, it comes out on the top one. They provide 12 out of the 12 services. And the number is also Azerbaijan growing the same. And the same for Portugal is very high, Poland, Macedonia, Estonia. This is a growing number. And I can see that this area over the last year has also grown in terms of importance per NREN. Some of the NRENs are dropping or phasing out services, and that's something what we need to go back and address that question with them directly. But that again, we will follow up in the autumn. I found it important to highlight, to show like how many of the NREN community providing trust and identity for education services and digital learning, because out of the 25 respondents from those who are providing educational services, 22 providing trust and identity services for education. And for digital learning environment is 21, which is also, I think, very high on their agenda. Then video conferencing came out on the same level. 21 NREN are providing video conferencing services for education. And the student management system is also growing. They are all interlinked, of course. You cannot have one without the other. And that's also something what you can go into more details later on once we analyze it and go back to the NRENs. We also asked the questions in our survey about potential collaboration areas. And on the top, the video conferencing for education and the digital learning environment came up. We can already see those from this last month's experience, as well as for the EduMeet services we have launched and the Open Up to You initiative and project we have launched. There is a very strong interest to grow and develop it further and make it into eventually as a service for the NRENs. Then there is discussions about the online and blended education and how the education will change after the pandemic and once it is starting in September. Most of the colleagues are in the opinion of having some kind of hybrid model for the future, but that is something for us also to discuss. This is my last slide, and I hope that this gave you some inspirations for the coming sessions to discuss more and also address some of these issues on the future. I will upload the slides to the wiki page, and you can also analyze it yourself, look into it, and we will come back with more details once the analysis is done. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions to me now, or shall we move on? We have still one more presentation to go, and then I think we will have 5 minutes for final questions. If I don't see any raised hands, then I would like to ask our next presenter, Natasha, if she can start sharing her slides and presenting. Natasha, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Hello, everyone. My name is Natasha Glavar. I'm coming from CANET, Croatian Academic and Research Network. And I will today try to present NREN's role in global impact and on education based on multi-stakeholder model. So it would be CANET's case as a supporter of education, the educational community in many various aspects, such as providing internet connectivity, digital tools, education, and others. CANET has also been broadening its role via community engagement on global level in the field of education, among others, exercising its active support to the Internet Governance Forum based on the multi-stakeholder model, which I will explain a little bit later. CARNET is a supporter of Internet Governance Forum on national and global level as well, through its participation in the advisory body. But first, I would like to say something about Internet Governance Forum, which is a global initiative operating under the auspices of the United Nations, with the idea of bringing all stakeholders together to participate on equal footing, taking into account all perspectives presented in discussions on issues important to Internet governance. And this initiative was launched in 2006 at the World Summit of the Information Society in Tunisia by decision of the UN Secretary General as an open platform for discussion on Internet governance issue. The immediate motivation for this decision was the need to involve the wider community in discussions on Internet governance and regulation, as it was recognized that topic related to Internet governance are broader than IP address space, Internet protocols, and domains, and that in those decisions should involve various professions and professionals other than engineers involved in the designing of Internet and Internet core protocols. So in addition to state representatives representing just one stakeholder government, other stakeholders such as civil society, academia, technical community, and private sectors were also involved in the discussions. If someone is interested to join, next week is our meeting, which is switched to online, since it should be in Geneva. And first day is open consultation, which is open to everyone interested. So if you are interested, you're welcome to join. So to help this idea to happen, coordination of the IGF involves the IGF Secretariat, who covers the logistic parts of the IGF process, and it's situated in the UN office in Geneva. And there is also multi-stakeholder advisory group whose aim is to advise UN Secretary General on Internet governance related issues. It consists of 50 individuals coming from all over the world and from various stakeholder groups with diverse expertise, experience, and CARNET has its representative in MAX, since I'm one of those 50 individuals.
Just one interruption.
Yeah.
1 minute left.
Okay. Okay, so IGF community work ends with its annual conference, which will this year will be in Poland, in Katowice, from 2nd to 6th November. It's usually very many participants, like around 3,000, and a few years a parliamentarian session is introduced and very well accepted. So what are Internet governance topics? I tried to structure them in this visualization. So from infrastructure and standardization, there are also legal topics, economic development, and social culture. And one of those is education as well. So how can we impact and influence? Well, combining mentioned approaches and principles, it's important, so bottom-up approach and top-down or from global to national. So some of the important internet-related topics found their way to from national to global, like internet shutdowns, local content development, and the other way around from global to national, like media literacy, children's security online. So it's very important to ensure free flow of information and ideas, and based on the principles of multi-stakeholderism, openness, inclusion, and equal footing. On all levels, whenever possible, we can only increase the quality of dialogues we're having and decisions we are making and policies we are working on. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Really appreciate it, and thank you all for the first presentations. So officially, we run out of time, and now it's the break time, short break time. However, if you want to raise any questions, I think we can still stay for a couple of more minutes. Do you have any questions or comments from the community? If you do, please make sure to raise your virtual hand or place it in the chat box. I don't see it at the moment. So when we are returning from our break, that's in 10 minutes, then I would like to ask you again to come to this room. And then we will start the first 10 minutes in this room with introducing the possibility for the community session. The community session means that if you had some topics or ideas which came up and it's not in the program, not in any of the already created sessions, so not in trust and identity, not in a scaling up and down experience during and after pandemic, then you are able to create their own sessions. So you can propose it and pitch it to us, or raise the question and see if there is enough interest from this group and create your own sessions. And that will be after the break. So I sound a little bit like the TV program. After the commercial break, we will be back in 10 minutes. So thank you all and see you in 10 minutes at 12 o'clock on the same room.